Rebecca.
Hey, Tom.
All right. It is Monday, September 19th, and I'm going to call this Port Authority meeting to order here at 4:35. So, the first thing on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from August 15th and approval of the agenda. So,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes. Do we do that both at the same time? Okay.
I'll second that.
all right, thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Tom. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. I didn't say aye. I'm supposed to vote as well, right?
You.
All right. The second thing on the agenda is a memorandum of understanding amendment number 1, lawn and snow contract, and I'll call on Clara.
Thank you, Port Authority members, and thank you for being with us this evening. First up on our agenda is the Memorandum of Understanding Amendment Number 1, Lawn and Snow Removal Contract. So, just a little bit of a background on this, because it's been a couple years since we've discussed this, but the Port Authority, as you know, owns the CBHH, and part of our duties as owner of that property is to provide lawn care and snow and ice removal services. This is a really important job, especially in the winter, because CBHH needs to be accessible for the people who are working there and who are being served by that facility. So in general, when we are in a contract with someone, they know that it's a top priority site for them to be clearing after inclement weather. So 2 years ago, we were told that the owner of the company who had been doing the lawn work, snow removal at that site was going to be retiring. He suggested another company. We went out for an RFP. The company that he suggested is the one who came forward with a proposal for the Port Authority, and that's ultimately who we chose to go forward with in a contract, Atlas Outdoor Services. So we have reached the end of the 2 years of that first contract with Atlas Outdoors. They've done a fine job. We have no complaints. We have reached back out to them. They are willing to continue that work at the same price for the next 2 years. So my suggestion to you, Port members, is to allow the president and the secretary to enter into an agreement with Atlas Outdoor Services to continue offering snow and lawn services to the CBHH between November 1st, 2022 and November 1st, 2024, at which time we will talk about this again.
Sounds good to me. If we need a motion, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Rebecca.
I'll second said motion.
Thank you, Tom. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor of awarding the contract to Atlas Outdoor Services, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carried. And we are on to the dairy RFP discussion, and again, I'll call on Clara.
Yes, thank you. So after the last meeting at which we talked about the RFP process, I was directed to reach out to some firms who could maybe help us formulate a new or updated RFP process for the dairy site. So between then and now, I reached out to WSB, Interstate Engineering, and More Engineering, and I received 3 proposals, one from each of them, each of which came in kind of late, so you haven't gotten them in your packets, but WSB sent theirs first, then we got the one from Interstate, and then More Engineering sent theirs in like right at 4 o'clock today, so I've barely had a chance to go over it, but I have read it. So essentially what we were hoping to get was examples from some companies who maybe have done proposal work in the past to help us with our RFP for the dairy site. And I'll let you take a look at the proposals here in a minute, but they kind of run the gamut of what that could look like. WSB has offered to update the RFP, like the document itself, and then have offered a staff person to hourly give us some direction as to markets that we could be tapping into, or how to reach developers directly to better engage of hopefully somebody who would want to come in and do something with that site. Similarly, Interstate Engineering's proposal is also offering insight into working with developers. They would help facilitate some of that discussion with developers to come up with what projects could look like, and helping us develop an RFP that would then request projects. Moore is the one that came in last, but it is the most all-encompassing, I would say. It is also the highest dollar amount, but they would really be running the entire RFP process. They did say that they would offer some wiggle room in the budget if we wanted to maybe do some of the RFP work ourselves, so do maybe a little bit more back and forth with their person instead of them just creating the RFP. So there could be some chance to take that dollar amount that they're working with down a little bit. But they would essentially run the whole process. They would even answer developer questions after the RFP has been out there. So really a full service spectrum that's being offered by Moore Engineering. So I'll maybe give you just a minute to look over these and then we can discuss.
I can't read it.
Oh, I'm sorry, you should have hard
Is it in our-
copies.
Yeah, we have a pile.
Other pile? Okay, sorry, got it.
You got it?
Yep. Thanks, Tom. I thought I was supposed to read that.
No, I can barely read.
Let's see. So is this something that we're wanting to make a decision on right now?
No, not necessarily, but maybe just getting a direction, and if we want to have further discussions with any of them, we could do that.
So WSB isn't technically writing a new one. They're just updating what we already have.
Correct.
How? Do you know? Like,
So they would, from what I understand from what we talked about on the phone, so what I sent to each of these different firms is the RFP that already exists.
Okay.
And the information kind of is what it is. So they would be taking that information that was already put into the first RFP, and they would just be sort of updating the document. So Kim, who is the staff person who responded to this, would maybe add some more market-specific language into the RFP, but like a lot of the information would just remain the same. Then their graphics person would come in and maybe just zhuzh it up a little bit, but they wouldn't be adding new materials necessarily. Whereas when you look at the Moore Engineering one, I believe they'd maybe do it a similar way, but they could also start from scratch and just do a brand new RFP. But again, the information is what it is. The site is cleaned up the way it's cleaned up. The acreage is the same. So,
I mean, with the information we had, how did we get it out there?
how did we get the RFP out?
Yeah.
Yep. So, if you'll think back to when we did that, it was sent out by our economic development firm, Greater Fergus Falls. I'm not sure which markets they targeted, but we also paid to have it out in the Fargo market, the Fargo Builders Market. It was on the National Planning Association website, and then it was sent directly to local developers who we've had relationships with in the past.
They're all very different proposals.
Very different.
And the Moore and Interstate state that they'll actually contact developers initially to get feedback on what's there, and then later to propose the plan directly, which I think has some merits. I don't know if I'm prepared to make a decision on it tonight because the dollar amounts are so different and the scope of service is so different.
Perhaps.
And I think you have to weigh kind of cost and benefit, right? So if it's 10 grand to get a really, really good product and a lot of assurance that something will come of it, that's good.
Yeah.
But
Perhaps.
Yeah.
is there an assurance, you know?
Right,
How
right.
much of an assurance?
It'd be nice to see a comparison of like what are they offering here, and Yeah, because they are vastly, I mean, not vastly, but they are very different, and the dollar amounts are very different. So perhaps, if you wanted to make like an executive summary and it just kind of, yeah, you know what I mean? Distill it for us a little bit and maybe during that process, you'll come up with questions for the firms that you can ask, and then maybe bring something back to us.
Sure, that was going to be my next question is, looking at these documents now, are there questions that you have about the services that they would be offering that I can then turn around and ask them?
Do you have opportunity to get, there's I don't know what page we're on. A couple pages in, it has some examples of what this Tom from Moore Engineering did with Bemidji, Sartell, and Maple Plain, and just kind of get an idea of how that went and what kind of hits they got on that. Do we know from what Greater Fergus Falls sent out in the National Planning Association in the Fargo market from our original RFP, where questions or things came from those three spots?
Like the risks or
Yeah, or like,
shortfalls they.
did a ton of people from the National Registry hit us up instead of the Fargo market, or, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do know what you're saying. We got nothing
From the national one?
from any of them.
From any of them?
What year was this went out?
2021.
Okay, so I was right in the middle of the pandemic, too.
Yeah, no one knew where things were gonna go.
Well, it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of developers were kicking back because of materials were so high and everything else. I mean,
Yeah.
So, I mean, that might have been part of the reason why they didn't get anything back, because nobody was willing to come forward. I mean, we had this one downtown by the Shopko. I mean, that was all getting ready to go, and then all of a sudden, the cost of everything went through the roof.
Yeah.
People started backing out, so it's like, do we really need to put a boatload of money into it to try to put it out there again? And see, now that the markets are picking up and they're doing a lot of buildings, I mean, even the guy with the mill, I mean, right now, from what I understand, everything's going out for bids on that, and the cost of construction really hasn't went down all that much, but for him, it's worth the investment, so maybe there's other developers out there where right now we're finally saying, okay, this is on the downswing, maybe we're willing to do, so how much money do we really want to invest, so.
Go ahead, Rebecca.
So I have a question, because at one time we talked about, do we know why we didn't get any RFPs? Was it because we didn't have enough information that they knew how to respond and that didn't pique their interest? Or because we didn't market it well enough? And so when I look at the Moore Engineering scope of work, they want to spend us to spend a lot of money on a new RFP. But there's not a lot of money put in here for spending on marketing. And I know we have our new marketing person now, that will be helpful, but I also think sometimes it's just getting it in front of the right people. So I guess the question is, did we give them enough information? And did we market it well enough? And we don't know the answers to those questions.
Plus, we didn't even have it zoned at that time. I mean, it was still RA, wasn't it? Or no, industrial.
It was industrial, yep.
And I think we've got it to,
R4.
okay, so it's ready for basically what we want to see go in there.
Yep.
Do we have developers with which we have, perhaps worked in the past, or, can get referrals or something like that could just take a look at what we put out?
So again, when we went through that process, we did reach out
Okay.
to we had Kevin Bartram, who's doing the mill
Okay.
project. He's a well-known developer.
Yeah, yeah.
He did look at it and
Okay.
he did give us
Okay, so
feedback.
that's.
And what did
Well,
he
that's-
say? I don't know what.
His feedback was that it was good information, but that he wouldn't apply because he wasn't looking for new projects. But he thought it was a good.
With a big project.
Yeah,
Right.
he thought it was a good RFP.
Okay.
And also in the interstate engineering one, and I don't know if the other ones, the second one is contact developers and to solicit any input, so. I think
And-
that's in all three of them, isn't it, to contact developers?
I'm not sure that WSV covers that in
Okay.
theirs. I think that could be built into it. I think with the hourly rate of Kim, like if that's something we wanted her to do, she would do that for us. But that would then be over and above that $1,200 amount.
The one other question I got is, I don't know if it was a problem back then, I don't know how much, if anything, has been corrected. We only have one entrance and exit on that property? I know I had talked to Andrew a long time ago, there was a variety of different crossovers that we could surrender in town in order to get another one on there, and I think that might be another problem there. I mean, I think we may want to look at getting that, just like the zoning, because a lot of people are going to be like, hey, you only got one way in and out of here. That's going to limit what we can do. I
Right.
think we need to also look at getting that done, so we can have, when we do an RFP out there, we'll be able to say, okay, this is what you got. You got entrance at both ends of the property, and it might make what a developer wants to do,
And that is really dependent on the railroad at this point. They have all of the information. They have the crossings that we've offered to give up in order to get a second crossing, and it really comes down to them actually agreeing to do it. And at this point, they have not made that commitment.
Bridget, did you have something?
So since this is really pretty new, should we bring it back next time? We could look at some of that with the railroad and then, read through this in detail and see what else we can learn?
Yeah, and does it,
That-
do we need to, look at the budget and kind of
Yeah,
plan
we
for the
definitely
year
want
too?
to
Yeah.
say, okay, we're comfortable spending this and
And if we could ask them for references, because to somebody's point, especially with the more engineering they list, but it would be nice to have contacts to just get some firsthand information about what it was like to work with them. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what you do on most other projects, so.
one other question. Do you like this concept of using an external firm to work on this with us?
I guess I'd want to know how successful they've been in the past.
That makes sense,
Yeah, just make sure we're getting the most bang for our buck.
right?
Because, obviously we want to get something going as soon as possible, but we also don't want to just throw money at it.
Just want to do it right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, so I think if you guys can prepare, some kind of executive summary
And I truly think that we need to get someone, we need to start leaning on the railroad, because the point is it's going to be really hard to get a developer on that. I mean, it's just like when we, finally demolished the old wastewater site. There's only one way in and out of there. If we were to want to sell that for a premium, we wouldn't want to, it's going to limit the amount of people who even want that property. So I think we need to look at where we want to have it, and then we need to find someone that's just going to be on them. Say, hey, we need an answer on this. And then, I don't know if there's anything in town that they want from us that, basically you can hold over their head, so, but somebody needs to get down on them, and they need to give us some answers.
I agree with you, and I think that has been the kind of the question all along is whether the railroad piece is the deterrent for developers from a access point, you're landlocked over there if a train is going by and emergency vehicles need to get in. So who's going to answer that? Is that something that Clara does, Brian Navarro does?
The contact thus far has been Brian. He's been the one working with the railroad.
So I guess the question is that something you pay an external consultant to look into? Because Moore had information in there about working with railroads? Or is that something internally we can figure out?
We
No.
should be able to figure the railroad out, you'd think, between Rolf and Brian.
Yeah, the size of the trains, I
Why
mean,
haven't we this
Right.
if you end up blocking one, you're going to end up blocking them both at the same time, because it's not that large of a property.
So we need a bridge. to
There
get
you
it.
go.
Well, we
Essentially,
need,
right?
Tunnel.
If there's a bridge or an underpass.
if that's the deterrent to getting a did develop. I just don't feel like we've gotten a hard answer on like what is that one of the,
Is it a barrier?
is that a
right?
barrier? And if it is, there's no sense in spending 10,000 on a consultant.
I
when
think we
that's
need to
gonna
find
continue
out
to
on
be a
that.
barrier.
That's a good point.
Well, then we're gonna figure that out.
Okay.
But you're right,
Yeah,
is that a barrier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because that's been in the back of our head all along, that we know that railroad is a problem, of course.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are lots of examples where railroads or lift bridges, as in Duluth, are barriers, but you raise a really good point about emergency services, too. And if that's gonna be housing, and
You have to have access.
And, you know, Perham has that railroad and trains going by at 50 miles an hour all the time.
Right.
How often does a train actually come down those tracks?
Is that an issue for them, or do they go so fast that they're not worried about it and there's enough access
I don't think
points?
trains go flying by on that one.
We don't have a lot of trains on this one anymore, I
Right,
don't
so is
think.
it,
That just goes over to the grain towers, don't it? Downtown?
But I'm assuming
Good to
it's going
see
to be
some
at
numbers
an
on-
opportune time at some point.
How,
It's like,
Of course.
it's like an insurance plan, right?
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, anecdotally, numbers wise, Andy works right next to that same, my husband works right next to that same railroad, just down on the other side of the river, and he says it's a couple times a week,
yeah.
a few times a week.
Not much.
It's not much. It picks up during harvest season, obviously, but it's not, I don't know that it's like, it's not daily even, I don't think.
Right. so then is that a barrier?
But how do you know that if you're not from here? Yeah,
The railroad must have some kind of data on that
you'd assume.
they would maybe provide to us.
Okay, well, so we'll ask these questions about the railroad. I'll reach back out to each of the firms, maybe get some example work that they've done before, some references, and then we can come back together again in October and continue the discussion.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, is there anything else to discuss?
I just have an observation, and I'm the one that approved the minutes and the agenda, so I apologize, but could we just always have like old business and new business on the agenda? Because I see in the minutes from last month, one of the things we were going to continue discussing is shovel-ready sites, just to kind of have
sure.
that, not that we have to be prepared to discuss it today, but just so that we keep revisiting these things and they don't just go off the slate of things to discuss.
Sure. Do you want an update on that?
Sure.
So we attempted to connect with Natai on it. She's been very busy with her exam, and so we're going to come back to it now that she's done with it and bring it forward at a future meeting.
Great.
Thank
She sailed through her exam, by the way.
Awesome.
Good.
I never was worried about it. So.
It's a scary thing, though. She said 10 out of 35 people
Oh,
advanced, so.
Oh,
good for her.
Yeah.
Good for us.
Yeah. All right. All right, if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thanks.
thanks, Caroline.
Yeah, she'll be happy to have that off her plate.
I was glad I only saw it in kind of a last second thing, so I didn't think about it out there.
There.
These ones aren't too bad.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.